I hope you enjoyed today, you enjoyed the car. Don't worry, I'm not going to give you a professorial lecture. It's only going to be a few minutes. But I do think, I know a lot of you have heard me talk before. I think it's important just to calibrate where the brand is. Land Rover continues its journey of transformation. If you think back maybe little as 10 years ago, Land Rover was very much a brand that, well, it was more of a 4x4 specialist 4x4 manufacturer. It is now, I think, a global power brand, and particularly our Range Rovers are cleaning up, aren't they, Joe, from a sales perspective. But of course it's not just about sales, it's about giving customers and consumers vehicles they literally love, because people do engage with our vehicles on an emotional level. We don't create commodities, we never will, because if we did, we'd be out of business. We create unique things that people literally fall in love with. And whenever I go to America, because in America they're always quick to tell me, because they say what they think, they literally tell me that. It's great. Remember, Land Rover's the master brand, Range Rovers, well, we've seen a lot of action over the past few years. And incidentally, I think this year, the Range Rover, the flagship, will be its best year on record, which is pretty good considering the different times we're going through. And you can see them, I live in London, but you can see them all over London, and that's replicated in every major city in the world. So Land Rover, the master brand, Range Rover is about refinement, sophistication, Discovery is about versatility, and of course Defender, which is on its way. In fact, it will be drawing up in a minute. Honest.
Virtually.
Huh?
Virtually.
Yeah, virtually, no. You know, everybody wants to know about this. We've been talking about it for 60 odd years. We haven't gone for 60 years, have we? Or is it 70? Anyway, at last it is coming. And I suppose when Defender comes, it will make this strategy make sense, because Defender will be the polarisation, if you like, of Range Rover. It will be equally desirable, but in a totally different way. Design and engineering integrity is at the heart of everything we do. Design and engineering is in harmony. And I say that because that isn't the case in a lot of companies. In fact, when I first came into this business, people like Alan Volkarts would be, in my view, a member of the Flat Earth Society, and he would have considered me a flower ranger, and never the two should be all in the middle over the top.
when he's been there.
But that's changed, because I have no desire to be involved with designing something that isn't engineered properly, and the two can coexist. So we continue that journey of transformation, and right at the core of everything we do is this design strategy, which was a design strategy that created the original Evoque. How many years ago was it now? No,
7 years. 8 years.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about modernity. I'll explain what I mean by that in a moment. Relevance, clearly sustainability is on everybody's minds, and most importantly, desirability. As I say, we don't produce commodities. We produce vehicles that people have an emotional connection with. And for me, it might not be a car, it could be anything. It could be a watch, it could be a luxury hotel, it could be any type of product. It doesn't have to be a luxury product. But the best ones, the ones that have designs that raise themselves above the ordinary, do it through, for me, 3 things. First of all, visceral. When I look at it from the gut, do I desire it? When I've got it, behavioural. Does it do what it's supposed to do? Does it work? And then last but not least, reflective. Once I've owned it, used it, experienced it over a period of time, do I still engage with it? Do I still desire it? Does it still work? And am I building a lasting relationship with it that reinforces why I bought it in the first place? And by the way, this isn't in equal measure. It's a bit like a graphic equalizer. Some products over-index so much on the visceral that they get away with not being so good on the behavioural, or vice versa. So the reflective bit is, and for me, that's the core of that emotional connection through design. Just want to talk a little bit about design principles, because we tend not to do that. I mean, you're clearly expert journalists, but you're not design experts, and sometimes I find it quite frustrating when I read things like the new Evoque looks just the same. Well, it doesn't. You just need to you know, it is an evolutionary design, and that's quite deliberate, because we'd have been fools not to have done that. But I just wanted to spend a little bit of time. Principles of good design. Fundamental one is volume and proportion. What's that? That's the way the car sits on its wheels relative to its overall length, its wheelbase, its overall height, height of waistline, overhangs, etc. And in our business, do you want to do this?
No. Not
It's easy, you know, try it. Sorry.
I'm interested.
I am a bastard, aren't I, sometimes? Sorry. At least I admit it. What do you want? I'm going to take that. Oh, it's a microphone. So, I don't know. Didn't know what it was. Anyway, so what we do at Land Rover is we start the concept, the tangible asset in the studio. We create the overall shape of the vehicle, the basic engineering of it, the packaging of it, in order that we can optimize those volume and proportions. And then we get our great engineers in and say, right, engineer that as close to that design as you can. And the success is how little the dilution is. Now, in some companies it work the other way around. You know, they engineer the vehicle and then they ask the flower arrangers, because that's what they are in that context, to make it look good. Problem is, the horse is bolted, because what can happen is something like that.
Oh.
Yeah?
Looks like a Fiat.
That's
pretty incredible.
So, you get my point that those volume and proportions are actually fundamental to the success of a car, because I bet, Joe, if that's what the Range Rover looked like, we wouldn't be doing as well with it, would we? So don't undermine the power of volume and proportions, and that has to work in every view, front three-quarter, rear three-quarter. The balance, the stance of the vehicle is absolutely critical. I'm going to show you something now. You didn't laugh at that. I'm surprised. It wasn't deliberate. But what we're seeing in the automotive world at the moment is a preoccupation, I think, with looking for something that is different, always putting too much on a vehicle, like too many lines. I use the word modernity. Well, what modernity is about is a reductive philosophy of paring back, so that you can actually see those volumes and proportion. This vehicle has a level of visual logic. I'm not going to say that does, because actually it sells very well. And it's up to you, but all I'm saying here is that's not our point of view. This is our point of view, which is quite different from the competition. Yeah? And there you can see it again. And maybe that's a slightly unfair comparison. What do you mean it is an unfair comparison? So, modern. And you know, even when it comes into the detail, you know, we have a view that every line on the vehicle should be doing a job, even if it is purely aesthetic. And there needs to be a degree of visual logic. And if you can put something on and take it off and it doesn't make any difference, it shouldn't be on in the first place. So it's quite a difficult approach, because it's as much about what you don't do as you do. And there you can see the Velar, which is now we have its younger brother, the next generation of the Evoque. And incidentally, the Evoque hasn't been influenced by the Velar. The Velar has been influenced by the design strategy, which has also influenced the Evoque. But they do share certain elements. But you can see that modernity coming through in, look how clean that car is. There's nothing, there's no over ornamentation at all on that vehicle. And some of the design enabling technologies have allowed us to get to things like the flush door handles, a flush glazing, higher levels of precision, better manufacturing techniques, so that as soon as you take a line off a car, you're looking at it in its purest form, so it better be good. The Range Rover Evoque, clearly that car was very successful for us, and I like to remind Joe, he doesn't know the marketing man either.
No, it wasn't me.
No, it wasn't you, you're too clever. Because Joe's a professor as well. Yeah. I remember when we launched this vehicle, or before we launched it, in fact we showed it in the States, didn't we, in 2008 or 9, Paul? Is he gone? Yeah, all right. And the Detroit show, and then, you know, as a concept, and then we went on to produce it. And I remember a marketing man saying, this isn't like, you know, a Range Rover, Gerry. We'll be looking to do 30,000 of these a year. Well, we averaged 135,000 a year. We sold over 800,000 in just over 7. I haven't seen that marketing man for a while. But they're always right normally. So, very important for us. At that particular time, the business wasn't doing very well, so it certainly helped the business. But for me, it helped to change our culture, because what it did is it proved to people you can reconcile the differences between design and engineering if you're determined to. And if you work in harmony together, you can create things that are desirable through design and very well engineered. So when it came to the next generation, you know, was it going to be evolutionary or was it going to be radical? Well, my view is quite simple. If you're introducing something new to the market that hasn't been there before, then be radical, because you've got nothing to measure it against. If you've got a vehicle that isn't doing very well in the market and it needs to change, then be radical. But if you've got something that has been so incredibly positive, so distinctive, that its customers love, why on earth would you just change it radically for the sake of it? Having said that, it's much easier to do a radical, different design than it is to do a good evolution of what already is a very distinctive vehicle. And that car is all about its falling roof, its rising belt line, and its proportion. And that little window at the back that you can't see anything out of. These guys have come up with a great solution to that. So you might have tried it today. What's it called? Clear View.
Clear View.
Fresh from Netflix.
Yeah.
They're going down the Swanee though, aren't they? They've invested too. Anyway, we digress. So, the new one. Yeah, it's an Evoque. Falling roof, rising belt line, overall volume and proportion. However, when you look closer, and that was the intent, you can see it's the new one. It has to be, because of its levels of modernity. The flush glazing, the flush door handles, the absolute precision, the reduction of line, fewer lines on the vehicle, elements have been removed. The mouldings on the wheel arches that originally took some cars off-road capability are gone. Waist rail finishes are gone. Roof joint finishes have gone. The car is actually very subtly reproportioned and it's been optimised. The wheelbase has grown a little bit, which has allowed better ingress-egress for the rear occupants. It's given you a better package. Front overhang's a little bit smaller. The car is minutely bigger, but you'd never know it because we've used quite a lot of plan shape on the front and rear. And I'm sorry to say, gentlemen, that in this case, bigger is better because this has 21-inch wheels, which optimise the overall proportion, which are an option, but as on Evoque, it was an option that was, a lot of people took it. And there you can see the comparison with the original Evoque, because another important thing is, when you replace a car that's been successful, you don't want to alienate the people that already have the vehicle. There's people that bought this vehicle maybe a year and a half ago and they don't want the new one yet. So you don't want to let them feel like they're being shortchanged. So there is that strong linkage and that progression that, you know, if you look at the detail, you can see where it's different. You can see it if you look closely. Plus, it hasn't lost any of its charm. One of the things we've had to do on this vehicle is make it better aerodynamically than that one, which means things like having to introduce more plan shape, which in turn means that you lose the width of the car, so you have to visually put it back in. That's being done by this lamp graphic that gives the width back to the car, but taking the corners off is taken away. So there's a lot of well-considered creative intellect goes into these designs. It's not a case of, you know, there's a clay model there, you've got to take, well, we'll have a line there today, oh, that might be good there. It is seriously very considered. And then those design enabling technologies, the matrix LED lighting, that give you that incredibly small lamp. I've already mentioned the flush door handles, but the optically bonded surfaces that give you that blade technology, which we've introduced for the first time onto the Evoque. And as I say, it hasn't lost any of its charm or characteristics. It's just it's much cleaner, it's more sophisticated, and it's grown up. And it's equally outside in the wilds as you've been driving it today if you went off-road as it is in the city. On the interior, it probably is more of a departure than the original because it needed to be. We've introduced the latest technology. The car is very relevant in terms of its connectivity. It still has that really nice cocoon feel when you sit in the car. You feel engaged in it, and at the same time, because it's reduction in switchgear, you get that feeling of calm sanctuary. We have a lot of discussion with our designers and engineers about connectivity, because in this world of 24/7, there's a desire to put loads and loads of stuff in. But of course, more connectivity you have, potentially the bigger irritant it is, and potentially the more danger it is, because you're driving a vehicle. And you know, in our country, if you're on a mobile phone, you could be stopped and fined by the police. But actually, working this thing here can be far more distracting. So that needs to be pared back, and it's something we're mindful of. In terms of the materials and the material finishes, they're of the highest quality. The overall interior now has levels of luxury execution that's comparable with our bigger flagship Range Rovers. And of course, our desire for sustainability is reinforced with, again, these premium fabrics as opposed to leather. You can get leather, of course. We first introduced the Cavadrat premium fabric on Velar, and we're introducing two choices here for the new Evoque. Now, it was a bit of a slow burn on Velar, but now we're starting to see more desire for it. And I'm not joking, I think this is going to move really quickly, particularly with younger people who quite frankly don't want animal byproducts anymore. So watch this space. So that's it from a design perspective. The exterior, it's a bold evolution of a very distinctive car. The interior is more of a radical departure, and of course it's a Land Rover and it's incredibly capable, and in terms of an engineering perspective there's some great innovation in it. And I'm not going to talk about that because, are you going to talk about it, Alan?
I certainly am.
Alan's going to talk about it, thank you.